This is the second section for this week, chapter 10.4, Slavery and Secession. Now, if you don't know what secession means, that means to actually back out. So we are going to start to see the southern states, they are going to secede from the Union. That means they are going to try and form their own country. Objectives. Explain the impact of Dred Scott's decision and the Lecompton Constitution on the political crisis over slavery. Second one, explain why Douglas believed that popular sovereignty was the key to eliminate slavery. 3, describe the events at Harper's Ferry and their effect on North and South. And 4, describe the events that led to Lincoln's election. Now, we've heard a little bit about Lincoln. We know that Lincoln was against Polk and the war with Mexico. So now we're going to see Lincoln taking on a more important war. He is actually going to be the president during the Civil War. Now, one of the most important things that we start to look at is a case involving this man named Dred Scott. Now, as you can see, Dred Scott, he is an African-American man or a black man. Now, Dred Scott, he had his owner and him had actually moved to free territory. So his owner, who was from Missouri, they moved to Illinois, which is a free state. And there, Dred Scott had actually gained his freedom. And he lived in Illinois for over 7 years. But him and his owner actually moved back to Missouri, and it was in Missouri, which is a slave state, where his owner died. As soon as his owner died, Dred Scott files a lawsuit saying that he is a free man because he had lived in a free state before his master had died. Now, the decision for this court case ends up sort of being a controversial one. It causes problems. The first thing is that the Supreme Court decides that Dred Scott is not a citizen. That means that he does not have the same equal rights as a white man would. And therefore, since he is not a citizen, he is not a free man. This outrages people in the North, while people in the South are extremely happy for the Supreme Court's ruling in this case. The people in the North, they basically are saying that Missouri Compromise was unconstitutional. So part of the reason why the Supreme Court ruled against Dred Scott was because of the Missouri Compromise. Now Northerners are saying it's unconstitutional because it's basically saying that people are property. Slavery is now legal everywhere, and that there shouldn't be a law against slavery. That is what the Supreme Court is arguing, that technically, because we don't have the Missouri Compromise anymore, slavery is legal. This is going to upset people in the North. They do not like the idea of slavery spreading. So they're going to side with Dred Scott's side. This comes to our second problem. It's called the Lecompton Constitution. Now, if we remember, we had a lot of Missourians going into Kansas to vote Kansas a slave state. Well, we're going to have another issue with the state of Kansas. We have the pro-slavery Kansas government. They are writing up a new constitution that protects slavery in Kansas. Now, most of the people who are in Kansas are against slavery. They are the free soilers. They believe in getting rid of slavery. And so when it comes to a vote with the people of Kansas, the people of Kansas vote no on this constitution. But, and this is where the President Buchanan, he ends up sort of making a huge mistake. The U.S. president, he accepts the Lecompton Constitution. This causes huge outrage amongst Northerners and amongst people in Kansas. It also causes a huge outrage with Douglas. Now, if we remember Douglas, he is the one who promoted the Compromise of 1850. He is also the same man who advocates or wants popular sovereignty to rule if a slave is free or if a state is free or slave. When President Buchanan sides with the pro-slavery Constitution, he is going against what the people in Kansas want. So Douglas ends up getting support from Northerners who believe that Buchanan doesn't have a right to do this. This ends up causing a further split in the Democratic Party. We have a further split between North and South. The reason why President Buchanan sides with the pro-slavery government in Kansas is because he owes the South for voting for him for his office. So he's sort of doing it as a favor to the pro-slavery government. But of course, we're going to have a very negative reaction from the people in the North. Now, it's been 2 years, and we've already sort of see that Buchanan is not following through as a very good president. We have another election coming up. And this time, we are going to see this election between Stephen Douglas, remember he's the one who is for popular sovereignty, and Abraham Lincoln. Now, many people believe that this was almost an unfair match. Stephen Douglas, he was a Democrat. He already had sort of a lot of support in the government. He was a very famous senator. He's the one who wanted to expand the railway. He's also the one who proposed the Kansas-Nebraska Act. He was very experienced and he had a lot of money. So he is sort of set up to be the leader in these debates. Abraham Lincoln, he was going to be the head of the Republican Party. But no one really knew who he was. He was a lawyer and he was a successful lawyer, but he didn't really have much experience when it came to government. But he challenged Douglas to a debate on slavery in the territories. So we're going to start to see the rise of popularity of Abraham Lincoln. So eventually Lincoln challenges Douglas to a debate. And they sort of have some differing views on this issue of slavery. Douglas, first of all, did not necessarily believe that slavery was immoral or evil. He believed that by having popular sovereignty, that eventually slavery would go away on its own, that people would just sort of eventually vote not to have slavery. Douglas also believed that in many of the new territories, such as Nebraska and Kansas, that it wouldn't really make sense to have slavery in these states, and therefore, what is the reason for fighting over this issue? Lincoln took sort of a different stance. He believed that slavery was immoral. He believed that the treatment of slaves was evil and wrong. He also believed that slavery a social and political wrong, so that slavery in itself should not be a part of America. And that third thing is he believes that there needs to be laws in place to stop slavery. So Lincoln, while Douglas believes that popular sovereignty will eventually have slavery fade out, Lincoln's saying, no, slavery will not fade out. We need laws to stop slavery. Douglas, he ends up winning this debate in the Senate election against Lincoln. But Lincoln, because of these debates, he ends up becoming a very famous person. And many people in the North, they saw him as a possible candidate for president. We have another sort of event that happens surrounding this man. This man, his name is John Brown. Now he is a white Northerner who is against slavery. And he actually has quite a lot of passion for this issue. John Brown, he's sort of studying history and he's looking at slave rebellions in Haiti and also in Rome. And he is looking at America and he's saying, it's about time America had a slave rebellion. So he wants to start the slave rebellion. He ends up leading 21 men. Now these are both black and white men into Virginia, and they sort of take over Harper's Ferry. This is an area where they can actually steal weapons. They have and trying to hand those weapons and give them to slaves. They end up holding hostage 60 slave owners. So these 21 men, they're basically holding 60 men who own slaves hostage, which means that they cannot leave or they might die. And while they're holding hostage, they're hoping that the slaves that work for these slave owners, that they will join and start a rebellion with his men. But John didn't really think about a few things. First of all, many of these slaves, they didn't join him. So, of course, they're not joining him for fear that they will get beaten by their slave owners later on. The second thing is he didn't really get the word out that he was trying to start a rebellion. So many of these slaves, they didn't even know that this was going to happen. The third thing is that John's men, they actually run out of food. So they start to starve. They don't have anything to really equip themselves for eating. What ends up happening is John Brown and his men are caught, and some of them are even killed. And when John Brown is caught, he is tried for treason. He ends up being killed by hanging in Virginia. This sort of, again, ignites this passion with North against South. Northerners, they look at John Brown as a type of martyr. A martyr is someone who has died for a great cause. The South, of course, is sort of happy that this has happened. 2 years have passed again, and we have another election. This time, we have sort of a new candidate emerging. Now we have Lincoln. Now, Lincoln wasn't the obvious choice for the candidate of the Republican Party. In fact, many people believe that another man, Stuart, William H. Stuart, he would be the obvious choice for the Republican nominee because Stuart had a lot of experience in government. But that almost worked against Stuart because he didn't really have a chance. Stuart almost offended many Republicans with his views on North and South. Lincoln, he was seen as more of a moderate. What ends up happening during this election is we see Lincoln is deemed as the evil leader in the South. But Lincoln dominates the North. So everyone in the North supports Lincoln. Everyone in the South is against him. Now the Democrats, they are split. So the Democrats, they have half their people in the North, half in the South. The South, as soon as Lincoln ends up gaining the presidency, the South is basically convinced that all their political power has been lost. So if we were to look at this map, we're seeing the green. The green is the Southern Democrats. The orange is a new party called BEL, the Constitutional Union. We have one Northern Democratic Republic, that's one place, Missouri, and the rest is Republican in the North. This is all Lincoln. We also have Oregon and California over here. They're also voting for Lincoln. This is going to lead to secession. Basically, because the South believes they have lost all their political power after Lincoln has been nominated, they are debating whether they're going to remove themselves from America as a country. One by one, we have many of these southern states do end up seceding from the Union. It starts with South Carolina, followed by many of these other blue states. After that, we have these gray states. They also join in seceding against the Union. But if you notice, we have a few slave states, Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. These states, they do not succeed. So my question to you is, what is next? Can states leave the U.S.? Can the North stop the South from leaving? And what about slave states that did not leave? What will happen to those states?